It's Edmonton's podcast on the Canada's Podcast Network.
Hello, this is Mario Toneguzzi coming to you today with Edmonton's podcast, a member of Canada's Podcast Network, where we talk to the entrepreneurs who are making it happen in Edmonton, Alberta, so you can listen, discover, and engage. Today's guest is Todd Rutter, an owner of A Cappella Catering in Edmonton. Thanks for joining us today, Todd.
You're very welcome. I'm pleased to be here.
Tell us a little bit about A Cappella and what it is and how it got started.
So it started quite a long time ago. I'm actually, I think I'm in my 32nd year of being in business. So while I was attending University of Alberta here in Edmonton, I worked at the Students' Union bar called Room at the Top. And after I graduated, or during that time, I really enjoyed the food and beverage industry, even though that isn't necessarily what I was studying in school, but I became very interested in the industry. And even before having graduated, I decided that that's what I would like to do. Upon graduating, I kept working at that bar, among other restaurants. I was sort of gaining as much knowledge as I could by working for other organizations. But I opened up a pizza stand in Room at the Top, and that sort of started the food service part of my business, and that quickly sort of evolved into a cafe. So I moved locations and started a cafe. Catering became pretty quickly an important part of the sales profile out of the cafe, and in fact, it outstripped restaurant sales within a couple of years. And so in '91, I made the decision to move exclusively into catering and close the restaurant and move to a warehouse and converted it, and the rest is history.
How has the catering business been these days? It's been tough times in Alberta for the last 5 years.
Well, I mean, a lot of people don't believe this when I tell them, but we've actually experienced, particularly in the last year and a half, we've experienced unprecedented growth. So we've been doing really, really well. I mean, we're kind of waiting for the glove to drop because we can't grow forever, but the last 18 months have been between 20 and 30% growth year over. So wow. We've actually been doing really, really well.
Why do you think that's been happening?
It's a really good question. I think it's a couple of different things. A couple of years ago, we really made an effort to upgrade certainly our image, but to evolve with sort of this new sort of foodie trend going on in the food culture in Edmonton, and we enhanced our presentation and a lot of different sort of menu items, and we think that increased our relevancy, and gave us a little bit more of a inside track on getting new business. But the main thing is we've actually started actively selling. So I don't know that many of my competitors do that, and so I think that's made a really big difference. But I mean, overall, we've got we're very passionate about what we do, and we've relentlessly tried to deliver the best that we possibly can. And I think it's paid off in the last few months, last couple of years, anyhow. Yeah.
Okay, what are the benefits of doing business in Edmonton?
Well, it's a good question, and if you look at the benefits of doing Edmonton compared to Calgary, for example, I don't live in Calgary and I don't operate there, but Edmonton has got a pretty diverse economy. And I think that's certainly in my business, that's been really important to us to withstand, downturn in oil prices and that sort of thing. Edmonton's got a sort of a very robust arts community. The provincial government is here, so there's obviously a significant amount of food service requirement associated with that. Additionally, we've got a very sort of, higher per capita post-secondary institution sort of rate here than other cities. So I think that that sector is important to us. We're kind of a healthcare center, certainly for Northern Alberta and Northern Canada. So there's a bit more healthcare than you would expect going on. And all of those industries are important to Edmonton's economy. And obviously the energy sector. But I think our economy is less dependent on the energy sector, or certainly my part of the economy, than all of those other things.
What about sort of the challenges these days of doing business in Edmonton?
Yeah, well, I mean, I'm going to talk out the other side of my mouth now, and that is that with the cyclical nature of energy prices, that's obviously a concern. Notwithstanding what I said about a relatively diverse economy, obviously when the energy sector drops, it does hurt people, and I would say that that's a disadvantage. I mean, if Edmonton weren't so, or our economy generally weren't so tied to one sector, obviously it would be an easier place to do business, because then you would have more methodical growth. You wouldn't have, substantial drops.
Mm-hmm.
So I would say that would be a disadvantage of operating in Alberta for sure.
Okay, what are you most excited about the business these days, and what's your vision for it for the future?
Well, we've got a bunch of things on the go right now. The main thing that I've been working on for almost a couple of years now, or a year and a half, is we've launched a food truck, which on the surface doesn't really sound like that big of a deal, but we did it to enhance our brand and to sort of bring us into a place of relevancy in the industry, because it is sort of a trendy, cool thing to do. But what it's done is that we created a really interesting, thoughtful, sort of on-trend menu that the food concept has been extremely well received by everyone who's had the food, and it is a departure for us. It's kind of based on smoked meat, and so we're using. I now want to take that. It's called Curbside is the name of the food truck, and I want to take that curbside food concept and bring it into more retail offerings. So, for example, at food courts or other sort of small installations of food service, to use that food concept, I think is a real opportunity for us, because the food is so well received.
Okay.
So that's the main thing that we're working on.
As an entrepreneur, what has been your biggest challenge in the business?
Well, I mean, overall, I think, and again, it goes back to the type of economy that we have in Alberta, and that is, I'd say, when we get into those intense boom cycles where there's labor shortages, that's pretty challenging. When it's difficult to get workers, and the ones that you do are not particularly motivated because of the position they are in. That is, they're in high demand. So I think that's a challenging scenario. But on the other hand, we have countered that by treating our people extremely well, and our goal is to have them the highest paid in the industry, full benefits, all that sort of thing. So our retention strategies are good, but in the boom bust cycle, we do get hit during the booms, for sure. I'd say that's the most challenging things that I've had in the last 10 or 15 years. Yeah.
Okay, super. I'm going to go into some sort of personal type questions here, Todd. If you were looking at inspiration, where do your ideas come from, and like what kind of things do you do to get inspired, I guess, that are outside of the business environment?
Well, there's two different. I mean, I take that question in two different ways. One thing that I do is that I find is where I really get a lot of thinking done, and I come up with ideas, and I think ideas through, and kind of conceptualize plans. Is I go on really long walks, and what I do is I actually walk home 2 and to and from work. I certainly don't have time to do that all the time, but I do it as often as I can. And it's quite a long walk. It's an hour and a half.
Oh, wow.
And that, I'm getting a little fitness in, which is important to me, but your mind can really, when you're walking, you don't really have to think about anything. It's not even like when you're driving. So I find that I can really, the brain really starts to work, and I can come up with some either solutions to problems or brand new ideas. And a lot of my, what I think have been significant sort of plans or ideas that we've moved on here at A Cappella have come during those moments. I also go on long hikes. That's a longer thing. I do winter backcountry skiing, same kind of thing. And then the other part of the other way to answer that question, where do I get inspired, is, whenever I'm, going to a restaurant or going on holidays, I'm constantly looking at other food, other cultures, how different people interpret different, recipes and menu items. So that's always an inspiration. I bring that stuff back.
Oh, that's cool. What about advice that you have for people? Like, first of all, like, what's the best piece of advice you've ever received for being an entrepreneur?
Well, I knew that you'd ask that question, and I thought about it, and I think the answer might surprise you, because the advice that I got was actually negative advice that I acted the opposite.
Okay.
That was, so a long time ago when I was struggling, I mentioned some of the early versions of A Cappella. It was a pizza stand and then a restaurant. Well, everybody knows how notoriously difficult the restaurant business is, and mine was certainly no exception. And in fact, I was told by my bank to close the business down, because in my account manager's mind, the cash flow and the financial reality of the business was so dire that his recommendation was for me to close the business.
Wow.
And and I also had a real minor investor, like a couple $1,000s, and I hadn't reneged, but I was late on paying that person, and he told me the same thing. He told me I should just quit while I was ahead, get a job, and move on with my life. And that moment, it happened around the same time. In that moment, I completely dug in and said, "Oh yeah, that's your advice? Well, just watch." And then, and so, I mean, it inspired me to dig deeper and do better. And I've never looked back.
Wow. So if you did take that advice and ended the business, what do you think you'd be doing today for a career or for a job?
Well, I don't know. I mean, that's really tough. I mean, I've always thought I would. Back when I was in university, I always thought I would like to be a journalist, and I still am quite engaged with media, and I find it really interesting. I wouldn't be surprised if I was a journalist.
Oh, okay. Bad timing for it these days.
Yeah, no kidding. Okay, well, I think now my career path is pretty well set.
Okay. So everybody has a bucket list, a personal bucket list these days. What sits atop yours?
Well, that's a good question. I really, obviously my family is extremely important to me, and so to continue to sort of grow with my family and do interesting things is always going to be my priority. I'm 57, so I'm also looking to retirement. So I've got some ideas about what that might look like. A lot easier said than done when you're quite involved with the business. So those are bucket list items. Get myself in a position where I can exit the company.
Okay.
Yeah.
Do you read any books, or
I do.
anything you're reading right now that's caught your attention?
Yeah. The Marrow Thieves is a real good book. I can't recall the author, but it was I think it was a Governor General's Award winner, and it's a Canadian book. It's fantastic. Books I read in the past: Precious Cargo, another Canadian book, excellent book. Anything by Malcolm Gladwell.
Okay.
Is always thought-provoking
Mm-hmm.
and important, I think.
Okay, then. If you had one word to pick to describe yourself, what would it be and why?
Well, I don't. I mean, I suppose you know, uh, perseverance is probably an important attribute that I have. So, I would say determined would probably be a pretty good word. I mean, I gave you the anecdote about being told I shouldn't pursue business,
Mhm.
and I did, and I'm really glad I did. And in fact, if I were giving advice to someone, that would in business, that would be my number one piece of advice would be to just keep on working hard and digging deep because you get better and you learn. So.
Mhm. Outside of Edmonton, is there any particular place in the world that you like to visit, travel to, spend some time at?
Well, yeah, I was thinking about this because I actually do travel quite a bit. And I think my favorite city on earth is still Manhattan. I think it's just a tremendous city and super interesting, and I love being there. But opposite of that, I love the west coast of Canada. I sail a lot, and in fact, I had a boat on the west coast for 10 years, and the remote regions basically between say Nanaimo and then north all the way up to Alaska is absolutely the most stunning, beautiful, interesting terrain and landscape I've ever seen. It's gorgeous.
Hmm. Now, now we're all creatures of habit. I'm wondering if you have a daily routine that you follow each and every day.
Yes, I'd say when I'm working, if I'm on holidays, obviously things are different. When I'm working, I like to get up fairly early, and I like to drink coffee, read my emails, kind of collect my thoughts for the day, and then I ride my bike to work often. So I'll ride my bike to work, which I also find quite stimulating. It's kind of fun to travel right through the city, and then I kind of hit work, and I usually have two or three projects or tasks on the go, and I'll kind of chip away at each of them in either equal amounts of time or what I feel is a priority, and then I go home and do things with my family.
Okay, we're going to end this, Todd, with a kind of a strange, kind of a unique question. So just imagine this scenario that we're going to drop you off at a tropical island somewhere in the middle of the ocean, nowhere. And it only has one phone booth there, no technology whatsoever. So no internet, no phone access at all. At any time, you can access that phone and call us, and we're going to come and pick you up. Couple of things. How long is it going to take you to make that phone call? And what do you think you'd be doing on that island while you were there?
Would I have anything? Could I bring some books or
Oh, yeah, you can
pen
bring,
and
but
paper?
just no technology.
Okay, well, I think you know what? I would look at that as a great opportunity. And I mean, I've often back in university, I took an art course and really liked it. So I might do some visual arts and painting. I mentioned my interest in journalism. I'd probably do some writing, perhaps, reading, get fit. I think I could last quite a long time. I mean, I think I'd probably miss my family, but if they were there, I could probably hang out for a very long time.
Okay, excellent. Now, is there anything you'd like to add before you leaving us today, Todd?
No, only that it's been, it's been a really interesting career for me, and there's never been a day in over 30 years of business where I wasn't highly motivated, and I think most entrepreneurs would say the same thing because kind of the buck stops with you, and therefore, I'm always inspired, and that's what I love about it.
Okay, great. Thanks for joining us today, Todd.